Okay, let me start by introducing the three speakers we've got today. Barry Dugan is joining us from the Sonoma County Water, and he's going to give us a background as to what's going on. And you don't only have to look behind him at the picture he has to understand more closely where we are. Claire Nordley is going to represent Santa Rosa City Water, and she'll talk a little bit about what the implications of this are likely to be for us during this year and what they hope we will be able to do to help in reducing water usage. And then throughout all this, we have Paul Lowenthal yet again. Thank you, Paul. And Paul is here from Santa Rosa Fire to help us think about if we are going to reduce, for example, irrigation water, how to make sure at the same time we don't increase fire risk. So with that in mind, Barry, would you like to get us started?
I would be glad to, George. Can you see my screen?
Indeed.
All right, so thank you very much for having me. I'm Barry Dugan. I work in the Community and Government Affairs Group at Sonoma Water, also known as Sonoma County Water Agency. Normally I start off all of my presentations with a little joke, but this is no joking matter, so I'm going to go right to the business. That photo that George referred to is actually taken at Lake Mendocino in January of this year, and things are worse now than they were then. So currently, our drought conditions are shown in this infographic. I know you probably can't read it, but right now, the 2021 drought is 2020 to 21 drought is the equivalent of the 1976-1977 drought of record. Our reservoirs are both at all-time lows for this time of year. We've had rainfall totals that are also at historic lows. What we're doing, and I'll just go through this very quickly, we have various water shortage planning and conservation programs. We've petitioned 3 times in less than a year to the state to reduce releases from the reservoirs. And we're implementing what's called forecast-informed reservoir operations that keeps more water in our reservoirs. And we also have launched a public awareness campaign, Drought is Here, Save Water. The ad that you see, the infographic you see, is published each week in the Press Democrat on Sundays on the weather page, and also it's updated on our own webpage. Just real quickly, drought vulnerabilities vary by community. So we don't manage all the water in Sonoma County. We manage 2 reservoirs. We are in the process of working out groundwater management along with everyone else in the state. But every city, every county, every community is affected differently by the drought. Many rural residential areas aren't part of developed water systems. So when we approach the drought, we have to take into consideration all the beneficial uses of water for drinking, irrigation, recreation, agriculture, and ecosystems. So this is a quick background on what the Russian River and Sonoma Water provides to our watershed. The Russian River supplies water to more than 700,000 people throughout the watershed, which stretches from Mendocino County down to Rohnert Park and out to Jenner. Our water that we provide to our municipal customers is naturally filtered through sand and gravels. Here's a diagram that shows the system. As you can see, it starts at Lake Mendocino. It actually starts above that in Lake Pillsbury, but Lake Mendocino flows into the Russian River, as does Lake Sonoma. And then in those shaded areas are the communities where we provide drinking water, including Oakmont, which is part of the Santa Rosa water system. We also provide water down into the Valley of the Moon, City of Sonoma, all the way into Marin County. These are some images that show how this drought compares with past droughts. So the image above was taken in 2019 at Lake Mendocino. from almost the exact same perspective 2 years later in January. So you can see how 1 year or 2 years vary greatly in this watershed in terms of water supply. Here's a graph, and I don't expect you to read all that, except if you look to the far left, that's 2021. The orange bar shows the level of Lake Mendocino on April 5th. So that's the lowest it's ever been since that dam was constructed in started operating in 1959. And that again is a different image, different perspective of Lake Mendocino, but you can see the difference between February 2019 and then January of this year. Here's Lake Sonoma, which is the larger of the two reservoirs. It holds a lot more water. And again, you can see that the storage in Lake Sonoma is as low as it's ever been on April 5th in the last 35 years. It filled in 1986. And again, here's a photo taken at Yorty Creek, 2019, where the water was up to the parking lot, and here in April of this year, where you can barely see the lake. So this is a slide that shows the significant impacts, significant responses to droughts. And then after the 1976, 1977 drought, which is the drought of record, that led directly to the construction of Warm Springs Dam. The drought of 2007 to 2009 initiated several statewide conservation programs. And the drought of 2013 to 16 initiated another statewide groundwater program, formation of Upper Russian River water managers to better manage droughts, and what's called the Forecast Informed Reservoir Operations Program. And we don't know what's going to happen after this drought, but it can be fairly certain that there will be significant changes and adaptations. So Sonoma Water does several things has several tools to address droughts. I mentioned Forecast Informed Reservoir Operations, which I'll talk about in a minute. Petitioning the state to manage flows so that we can keep water in reservoirs, and regional conservation and water shortage contingency planning. And I know Claire will talk about water shortage contingency planning, which I know you're all interested in. And also we have public outreach campaigns for conservation. This shows the Forecast Informed Reservoir Operations. So in 2013 and 14, we had a big rainstorm that filled Lake Mendocino into the flood pool. That blue line to the left, where you can see where it peaks, when water gets above the orange rule curve, that orange dashed line, the Army Corps of Engineers has to release it for flood control purposes. What they didn't know was that that was going to be the last significant storm for well over a year. So we lost a lot of water in that event. What Forecast Informed Reservoir Operations does is we're using advanced forecasting tools. We can now keep that water in the lake, in the flood pool, as long as there's not a big storm coming. So this past year, we were able to, in 2020, we were able to hold back about 11,000 acre feet of water that otherwise would have been released into the Russian River and not been of beneficial use. And this is a program that is being managed by a whole list of state, federal, and local agencies, including Sonoma Water, NOAA, the Scripps Institute, and Army Corps of Engineers. So we encourage conservation all year. Our typical campaign starts in May. This year we started in February. And we have a group that's called the Sonoma Marin Saving Water Partnership that's made up of all of the contractors that Sonoma Water sells water to. So Santa Rosa, Windsor, Rohnert Park, Cotati, Petaluma, North Marin Water District, Marin Municipal. And through that program, we've been able to reduce, and the whole region has reduced its per capita use from 129 gallons per day, which was the target. And last year we were using 113 gallons per day. So we've exceeded the target, and we've been very successful. What we're doing now is we're asking everyone to save even more. And we're doing that hopefully by increased outreach to local media. On the right is one of our new ads that will be going out into local newspapers, websites, on the radio, just encouraging better use of water. The obvious simple things that we all know that everyone doesn't follow. So when you're brushing your teeth, turn off the water. When you're washing your hands, turn off the water. When you're shaving, turn off the water. Fix leaks. Claire is going to talk more about that. That's her area of expertise. So again, the drought conditions are as bad as they've ever been. This could become the drought of record this year. We're encouraging everyone to reduce their water use. And if you need information, sonomawater.org for water saving tips, savingwaterpartnership.org. And I know that, again, Claire will be sharing some website and some drought information from Santa Rosa Water's website. So I'm happy to answer questions now, or we can answer them when the others are done.
Thank you, Barry. That was excellent, sadly excellent. Let's hold the questions until we get done with Claire's talk, because I think that'll put it in a sharper context. And I know there are several questions that have already come in. Claire, would you like to take the helm?
Sure. Yes. Hi, George and everyone. Thanks so much for being here. And thank you, George, for inviting us. I'm Claire Nordley. I'm the Water Conservation Coordinator for the City of Santa Rosa. So I'm going to just share my screen so you all can see my presentation and we can get started. All right. Can everyone see my full screen?
Yes.
Great. All right. So I'm going to be talking about drought and our water smart resources for customers. So, let's just dive right in. Basically, right now, we are not requesting any sort of voluntary or mandatory conservation target. However, come May 18th, so about a week from now, we're going to the City Council and we're requesting a 20% voluntary community-wide reduction in water use compared to 2020. So I want to emphasize the voluntary part, and I want to emphasize the community-wide piece. The voluntary piece means that we are not looking at your water bill. We are not rationing. So we're not going to be, assessing any sort of financial penalty if you're not able to make that 20% reduction. And then the other piece is it's a community-wide reduction. So basically, we are not, again, asking any individuals to save specifically 20%. We're asking as a community-wide, as the entire city of Santa Rosa, for everyone to save, for us to save completely 20%. So that means for the people that are super savers, the people that are saving their shower water when they're heating it up, people who are have drip irrigation in their yard instead of lawn, you all are doing a great job. You are our super savers. You do not need to save an additional 20%. For people who maybe have some wiggle room, who are not doing extraordinary measures or who are not saving, those are the people that we really want to target. And those are the people that we want to encourage to save water. So just want to be super clear on that. We often get a lot of phone calls, a lot of emails from people who are saying, I've done my part. I've done a huge amount of conservation already at my house. I have low flow fixtures. I've removed my lawn. There's nowhere else I can go. And for those people, we're just saying, good job, keep on going. You don't need to do any more. So I just want to be clear about that. Then after May 18th, sometime in June or July, and we're not sure exactly of the timing yet, we're going to be going into mandatory conservation. And I'll explain sort of what that means in the next slide and what sort of requirements we're going to be asking for in that June-July timeframe. Basically in the June, July timeframe, we're also going to be initiating a water shortage emergency, and that has a very specific definition in the state of California that I'll explain in the next slide. And we're also going to be activating our water shortage contingency plan. Again, I'll explain that in the next slide. So for the people who are really interested in conserving and want to meet the voluntary community-wide reduction of 20%, you can look at your water bill to see how much water you're currently using. On the upper right corner of your water bill, you'll see where it says gallons per person per day. So the city of Santa Rosa, when you first set up your account as a city, ratepayer, we asked you, how many customers do you have in your house? And you told them, 2, 3, whatever, however many people live in your house. We take the total number of gallons that you've used that month and we divide it by the number of people in your house. It's not fancy math. It's just that. And then divide it also by the number of days since we last billed you. So that's how we get that gallons per person per day. So right away, you can see that in the time when you're irrigating, that outdoor water use is also included in that gallons per person per day. So it doesn't necessarily mean that that's how much you're using as an individual person. It's your total water use from both indoors and outdoors divided by the number of people in your house. If you need to update the number of people that are living in your house, and it will say in your water bill how many people are in your house from what you've told us, if you need to update that, say someone moved out, someone moved in, etc., you can just call the city of Santa Rosa and we can update that for you. And that will change your gallons per person per day. So you can always go to your water bill to look at how much water you're using. The other place you can go to, and that will be launching in sometime early in June, we're going to have an online portal. You're going to be able to log into your account and see exactly how much you're using every single hour. So that's from our new AMI, sort of smart meters that we have installed citywide. It's a really great program and it's going to make conservation really easy because you're going to be able to see, oh, wow, I'm using, so many gallons every single hour. I might have a leak or something like that. So that was going to be launched sometime in June, just in the next couple of weeks. We're going to be sending out letters to every single person in the entire city of Santa Rosa, giving them the information about how to log in and what the link is. So you certainly receive that information. So let me move on to the next slide. So this is a water shortage. Basically, a water shortage has 8 stages in the city of Santa Rosa. And this is required by the state of California. We're required to create a water shortage contingency plan. We have to update it every 5 years. And we hope we don't have to use it very often, but we're certainly going to be using it this year. Basically, stage 1 is voluntary conservation of 10%. Stages 2 through 8 are mandatory conservation, and they go up in increments of about 10%, all the way up until stage 8. Stage 8 is mandatory conservation of 50% or more. Each of those different stages have specific actions that are tied to them. So, for example, in stage 2, we require a water waste patrol. This is where we actually have city staff go out, drive around the streets and look for water waste. That would be like irrigation that's running into the gutter, or a broken sprinkler, or a hose nozzle, that kind of thing. In stage 2 also, we require hose shutoff nozzles. So it means that people can't just have an open hose and be watering willy-nilly. They've got to have an automatic shutoff nozzle. And we actually provide those for free at the city of Santa Rosa. So you can pick those up anytime, and I'll explain more about that in future slides. Also, in some of the stages, I think in the stage 2, we require that restaurants serve water only upon request from the person sitting at the table. So they're not just automatically serving it to you, and you have to request it. Stage 3 and above, we actually limit the hours of irrigation. So between stages 3 through 8, we say you can only irrigate between 8 p.m. and 6 a.m. But when you get to stage 8, which again is the very last stage, it's the most severe stage. This would take place in the most significant and severe shortage that we would be in. That's when we would prohibit landscape irrigation, and not before. So we do not prohibit landscape irrigation in any of the other stages besides stage 8. At this point, we're not going to be in stage 8. this year. So, you guys should not be concerned about limiting your irrigation. We certainly want people to be conserving, and we certainly want people to irrigate at night all the time, but it's not going to be even required until stage 3. So I will move on, and you guys can certainly ask questions as we move forward. Barry covered this, I think, really well. Basically, we've got a drought campaign that's out there encouraging customers to save water in their homes and businesses. This is a multimedia campaign that we have digital ads, social media posts, presentations just like this one. All of our ads are both in English and in Spanish as well to target all of our customers. So how can people save water at their homes? Well, one of the best ways, and one of the ways that we offer to our customers, is we provide free outdoor, socially distanced, in-person checkups. So we'll actually come out to your house. We schedule a time with you. We'll come out to your house and we'll look at your irrigation system. We'll look at your irrigation controller. We'll help you with timing. We'll provide recommendations about how to make your irrigation system more efficient. And then we'll send you a report at the end, sort of detailing those findings. This is open to both homes and to, say, golf courses or HOAs, anywhere that has landscaping. We do it all, both for individuals and for larger sites. You can register and you can ask for this checkup at the website that I've listed right there, or you can even call us and we'd happy to make an appointment with you on the phone. We also, because of COVID right now, we're not doing in-home indoor surveys, but we can send you a kit where you can actually conduct the survey yourself indoors and request devices as well. So we provide free shower heads, free faucet aerators, hose nozzles, flappers, dye tabs to test your toilets. We've got a lot of different pieces of equipment that you can pick up from the City of Santa Rosa offices. And I'll show you the address in just a minute. So we also provide educational workshops on a regular basis. They're mainly related to gardening and outdoor landscaping. You can go on our website and look up our workshops. We also have indoor rebates. We provide a washing machine rebate. Like I said, we provide free water smart devices. We also have a rebate for recirculating hot water pumps. So if it's taking a long time to receive hot water at one of your fixtures, say a shower head or an aerator that's pretty far away from your hot water heater, you can install a recirculating hot water pump and get hot water on demand. So we provide a $100 rebate for that. We also provide outdoor rebates. So we have an irrigation efficiency upgrade. So if you're interested, for example, in upgrading your sprinkler system or installing a new drip irrigation system, we provide $100 for residential customers and $1,000 per meter for commercial customers. So again, the commercial customers would be things like HOAs or golf courses, etc. We also have a grass removal program. So we pay 75 cents per square foot of grass removed, and you can get 1,000 square feet removed for residential and 10,000 square feet for commercial. We also have a rainwater harvesting rebate. We pay 25 cents per gallon of storage, and we rebate the cost of materials. And just to give you a perspective on rainwater harvesting, a lot of people think, well, it's not that much water. I don't know how much I would really save. But 1 inch of rain over 1,000 square foot of roof yields about 620 gallons of water. So it's pretty significant. You can certainly, it certainly adds up over time. We also have a gray water reuse rebate. So if you're interested in reusing your water from your washing machine or your bathtub, you can plumb it directly to your outdoor landscape, and we pay $75 per fixture that you're routing outside. We also have, if you're interested in becoming more, going more advanced than just those 2 fixtures, we have another rebate, which is $200 for every 1,000 gallons saved of monthly savings, basically. And that requires, building permits and design plans. Certainly more complicated. We don't have many people go through that rebate, but we do have quite a few people receiving that $75 per fixture for washing machine out to their landscape. I should also note that all of our rebate programs, you're required to call us prior to starting any work. We don't provide a rebate if you've already started the work. We have to do a pre-inspection before you start anything. So before you rip out any lawn, give us a call. Before you start, remodeling your irrigation system, give us a call. We have to do a pre-inspection, and that is a requirement. We're pretty stringent on that. So definitely call us or email us prior to starting any work. So just want to end, we're here to help the city of Santa Rosa. We have 6 full-time staff members who just work on water conservation, and we are happy to help. We are, super busy right now, as you can imagine, which is great. This is a happy problem to have, but it may take us a little while to respond to you. Sometimes it takes us even up to 3 business days to return a phone call, unfortunately, just because we are super busy and we have limited staff, but we will get back to you. We want to help. Please feel free to reach out. You can go to this website to contact us, or you can call us anytime at this phone number.
Okay, thank you, Claire. Paul, I'm going to give you one chance to see if you want to throw any thoughts in before we get started with questions.
No, I think obviously we're getting a lot of concerns about what the drought means to our community. And Barry and Claire both gave a lot of good information. From our standpoint, it really highlights the need for defensible space and home hardening. We fully are aware that regardless of whether or not people are rationing, overwatering, whatever the case may be, there's still going to be critically dry fuels this season. The drought itself is what the effects are going to be and how long they're going to be is yet to be seen, but we're forecasting for a long, dry, hot summer. So again, there's a lot of good information, but the fuels that are lacking rainfall is what is leading to the drought, is what is creating the concern here locally. So it really, again, it does highlight the need for the defensible space and home hardening and a lot of the resources that we have been pushing out. I'll also take this time to shamelessly plug the brand new website that the city of Santa Rosa just released to help with wildfire prevention. That was officially released yesterday. It was an action measure that came out of our community wildfire protection plan, which was to centralize information related to preparing for fire season. The new website that was turned on yesterday is srcity.org/wildfire ready. And I'll stick that in the chat. And thank you for the 1 minute.
Okay. So I have 2 questions that have come in before we start further. And if you have questions, the easiest way to deal with them is to put them in the chat. And that way we can sort of curate them as we get them out. So the first question is, you've talked about residential, but we have a lot of commercial, we have the golf club, et cetera. And in the golf club particularly, I know they have wells. So how do you integrate the logic of water management with the fact that there are institutions that have wells?
Yeah, it's a good question. The city of Santa Rosa does not manage well water use. We are only a urban water provider. We only regulate and can manage our own individual water supplies. Barry, do you want to talk more about Sigma? I think this might be, you're more of an expert on that than I am.
Certainly not an expert, but thank you, Claire. So several years ago, Claire's right. There's not a local agency that currently regulates groundwater. The county does issue permits for new wells, but there's no regulation of groundwater, and historically in California there hasn't been any. What the state did was institute the State Groundwater Management Act, and Sonoma Water is currently managing 3 different groundwater basins to implement that law and develop groundwater sustainability plans. We made a presentation yesterday to the Board of Supervisors, and there was discussion that at some point the state and other agencies could become involved if things got critical enough, but right now there's not any regulation of groundwater.
Okay. The other question, which sort of cuts across where Paul lives, is How do you ensure that we have enough water pressure, that we have all of our water storage facilities adequately filled? 2017, we remember that we ran out of water, or I believe the story is we ran out of water in Fountain Grove. So how do you ensure that there's enough water to protect us in a fire season?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So let me clarify a couple things. I don't know if it's a fair assessment to say we ran out of water in Fountain Grove. When the fire moved through Fountain Grove, there was no stopping it up there, and there wasn't a lot of actions that were taken there from a firefighting standpoint. It was more of a life rescue and life safety standpoint. What we saw in Fountain Grove was thousands of open gas lines and open water lines for both irrigation and water. However, at the bottom of Fountain Grove, where the firefight was actually taking place, I personally witnessed a significant number of engines tied into our hydrant system and actually using that water to fight and stop the commercial structure fires. So we are aware that there may have been water pressure issues up in Fountain Grove, but I wouldn't say that that actually had an effect on the actual firefight up there. Again, there was a firefight. It was life safety up in that area and rescues, and the firefight was taking place down below. Regardless, we have changed our practices. Now, anytime there is a red flag condition locally or any elevated fire weather concerns, the water pressure is increased by filling the reservoirs and tanks within our wildland interface. So there is a new practice that takes place that has been effective, and it has been what we have implemented following the 2017 fires, and obviously played a part in our response to the 2020 fires here locally.
Okay. And Claire and Barry, either of you want to make a comment? How do we make sure that there's enough water that the water pressure can be managed when it has to be?
I think Paul answered it perfectly. I mean,
Okay, fine.
We're filling the tanks prior to
Okay.
any sort of risk of fire. So we're ensuring that there is adequate water supply available.
Okay.
And I might add, George, that there was adequate, I know throughout our system during the Tubbs fire, and that was the biggest one from an urban standpoint, that there was adequate pressure throughout our system. Locally, as Paul said, there was probably a lot of drain on specific areas, but throughout our system, we maintained adequate firefighting water pressures.
Great. Claire, question about how the half of us who live in sub HOAs, how do we get a look at our water usage easily? Is that going to be in the stuff you send out or not?
Unless you're receiving a water bill and you're a customer of the city of Santa Rosa, that's the only way you can receive your water use. So, you could petition your HOA to request that water use and then divide it evenly by the number of people that are using that water. But we don't have submeters. So, unless you're submetered through your HOA or your HOA provides you that information, we can't provide that information because it's just, we don't know how many people are actually using that water.
Okay. So if the HOA receives a bill, okay, it will at least say how many gallons they use.
Yes.
Okay, and so they can convert it into the gallons per resident.
Right, by simply dividing it by the number of people that live there.
And again, if I were the president of one of the sub HOAs, I would be able to go online and remind myself how much we used last year.
Potentially. So if you're the account holder, you certainly could.
Okay.
So whoever the account holder is has access to that information and could call and request that information. Or like I said, once we launch that online portal in the next couple of weeks, they could go online to look at that information.
Okay, combining a couple of questions here. Since 1976, 77, just a second. Is he still on the line, Ray?
No.
Okay, I don't have time. I can do it. Since 1976-77, the population in the county has gone up quite significantly. Okay. Why are we not taking a more, I'm repeating a question on the chat. Why are we not taking a more serious effort at reduction right now? Because of the probability that we will not make it through to the fall.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's a complicated answer. It's not just a simple question and a simple answer. The reason, there are multiple factors that come into play, I should say. So one of them is that the city of Santa Rosa, about over 95% of our water comes from Sonoma water. The other 5-ish or less than 5% come from local sources. We do have a few small wells within the city of Santa Rosa that we pull water from, but most of our water comes directly from Sonoma water. As Barry mentioned, Lake Mendocino is not in great shape. Lake Sonoma, much larger reservoir, not in great shape, but also not going to go dry this year. So we're less concerned about the people that are pulling water from Lake Sonoma. So that would be pretty much all of the water contractors, everyone who purchases water from Sonoma water. People who are getting water from Lake Sonoma are really under a time crunch and really under drought conditions and need to conserve immediately. The prognosis is not good up there, and Barry can speak to that more so than I can. But because Lake Sonoma is larger, I mean, that's the whole reason why we built Lake Sonoma. It's much larger. It holds multiple years of water supply. So we feel confident that we can achieve a water reduction target of about 20% and still be able to make water deliveries to our customers. So we don't need to conserve more than the 20% at this point in order to still have enough water left in Lake Sonoma in order to get us through this year and have a rainy season next year. We don't want to constantly call for incredibly severe reductions because we don't want to be the people who call wolf, right? So we want to start slowly, and we found that in previous droughts, our water use has dropped dramatically as soon as we call for conservation. In fact, we've already seen a 17% reduction in the last month of water use. So you all and City of Santa Rosa people are very good at conserving. And so we're not concerned about meeting our water reduction target once we call for that conservation. And in fact, even before we've required conservation, people have already started to conserve. So that's the good news. Barry, you want to talk more about maybe the difference between Lake Sonoma and Lake Mendocino and the uses there?
Yeah, I thought you explained it well, Claire. I mean, we're in a severe drought. We know that, but the real crisis is in the upper river between Lake Sonoma, between Lake Mendocino and Healdsburg. There is enough water to get through this year in Lake Sonoma. However, if it drops below a certain point by, I think it's the end of July, then there will have to be a mandatory reductions. So we're still waiting to see how well water saving efforts work and what those levels are when we get to that point. We're also petitioning the state this week, and in fact tomorrow, to request a what's called a temporary urgency change order to continue to reduce flows in the river and ask for a mandatory 20% reduction of pumping from the river. And how that 20% is determined will be up to each contractor, each city or each water agency to determine. So in the city of Santa Rosa's case, they may already be achieving that 20% reduction, whereas the city of Sonoma may not find it as easy to meet those reduced allocations.
There's a question here. Do the weekly water smart irrigation guidelines include the 20% reduction, or do we have to somehow knock them down by 20%?
They do not include any reductions. And the reason why is because we're asking for a 20% community-wide reduction. and we're giving people the option of reducing 20% in any way. You all could reduce in your outdoor use, you could reduce in your indoor use. We're not telling you how to reduce, we're just telling you we need this 20% conservation. And then again, I want to emphasize that this is the conservation call that we're asking for right now is not on an individual. So if you're already a super saver, you do not need to continue, you don't need to save an additional 20%. We're looking for some people, I mean, we have some people who are using literally thousands of gallons an hour during their irrigation cycles, literally thousands. And those are the people that we're really targeting. And those are the people that we want to save. Those people may save 40%, 50% more because they're going to restrict their irrigation significantly. So those people are sort of bringing the bulk of our water usage up. Super savers, you guys are already doing a great job. You don't need to save an additional 20%.
Okay. Are there commercial applications that are required to use recycled water?
We don't require that people use recycled water, mainly because we can't provide recycled water to everyone. We do have a pipeline of recycled water. It's here on the west side of Santa Rosa. It feeds Finley Park, for example, a Place to Play Park, if you know where that is on West 3rd. It sort of goes down Stony Point Road. At this point, and we also, I should say, we also supply recycled water to some agricultural users. At this point, we're actually under a shortage of recycled water. We don't even have enough recycled water to provide very much to agricultural users at this point. So there's not a surplus of supplies to connect additional customers to our recycled water pipeline.
At one point, there was a water treatment plant associated with Oakmont that provided water to the golf club. That was shut down a decade ago or something. Have there been any thoughts given to restarting that?
I didn't even know that there was a wastewater
yeah.
treatment plant associated with Oakmont. That's news to me, before my time, I think. I'm sorry, I don't know any information about that. I'm curious about it though. I can get back to you, George. I'll write that question down.
George, if I could, just as a general statement, producing and transporting recycled water is a very expensive proposition. As Claire mentioned, because the regional plant is on the west side of Santa Rosa, to get recycled water from any source at this point would require a pretty large project.
I guess the point I was making was there was such a capability here in Oakmont. Okay, and it did operate with separate treatment and then separate piping over to the golf club and all the rest. So whatever was the logic, I think the logic was it was cheaper to take it downtown and treat it downtown than to try to maintain the facility. But that was not a place where people were thinking about shortage of water as being the dominant issue. Okay, they were thinking about cost. Is there another action that can be taken, ranging from another dam and another lake to desalination to anything else, to increase the supply? Is there anything in the discussion at all, Barry, of possibly doing that?
There's some discussion. I haven't heard any discussion of another dam. I don't think that is really being studied or thought about right now. Ocean desalination has never really been studied for feasibility in Sonoma County. I think I know that's a very controversial, very expensive, and very energy intensive way to treat to produce drinking water. However, it is being done in some parts of the state. I think the more short-term and feasible new water supply would be what's called aquifer storage and recovery, where we take water from the Russian River during the winter during high flows. We filter it through sand and gravel as we normally do, and then we would inject it into aquifers where it can be stored and then taken out during times of shortage. We've done a pilot project in the Sonoma Valley for aquifer storage and recovery, and it's proved feasible on a small scale, and those studies are going to continue. That's not a short-term solution, but it is, I think, probably the one increased supply alternative that we'll be pursuing.
I'd also like to add, if I may, water conservation is actually considered a source of supply. The city of Santa Rosa understands that conservation has resulted in significant and long-term reductions in our water usage for the city. You know, like Barry was saying, the gallons per capita per day have decreased, even though our population has increased over time. And so we actually consider conservation a source of water supply. It's also the least expensive source of supply. If we had to build a new dam, if we had to do desalination, that's incredibly expensive, not to mention environmentally impactful. Conservation has no environmental impacts and is less expensive. So the city of Santa Rosa has invested over $20 million in water conservation over the last 10 years because we're committed to it and because we see that a long-term reduction in water supply is like buying new water, but for cheaper and with no impact. So
is water an element in environmental impact reports when you were looking at new construction?
I want to say yes. I don't review environmental impact reports, but it's a good question and I will get back to it.
Okay.
George, I can say with a relative degree of certainty that, you know, water supply does have to be proven in order for an EIR, during an EIR process. But I think, you know, from our standpoint, we're not land use, we're not in the land use business. We don't make any land use policy decisions. What each agency, including our own, does have to do is update their urban water management plan every 5 years to demonstrate to the state that we have adequate water supply to meet the needs of our communities. And each of those communities have their own plan. So they, as they're planning for the future, they need to demonstrate that there is adequate water to meet future demands that includes growth.
Then let me ask the $64 question, if I might. You obviously then in the last 5 years have done a report to the state. Did you report that in fact we had adequate water?
We
Yes.
did, yes, as a city
Yes.
of Santa Rosa.
Yes, in fact, the urban water management plan was presented to the Board of Supervisors yesterday. And I'm sure all of you were watching when they were going till 6 o'clock last night. And it did demonstrate that there was adequate water. You know, of course, there are a lot of variables. And if we knew we were going to have 10 or 15 years of drought, then that would change everything. But, you know, we have to plan given certain scenarios and hypothetical situations.
Okay.
Did that dodge your question adequately, George?
Yes. For those of us who believe in climate change, we're a little unsure about how the future is going to look compared to how the past has looked. And I keep looking at that picture behind you, Barry, of the dry lake. Have you discussed at all water conservation with the landscape companies that in fact manage a lot of the landscaping for HOAs here?
Yeah, I should say both generally yes and specifically yes. Generally in that we of course have our drought campaign that goes out to all of our customers. We hope that customers are, you know, observing that campaign and seeing that we're requesting conservation. We also do specific outreach directly to landscape companies. We're part of the advisory board of the California Landscape Irrigation, CLCA, California Landscape Contractors Association, the North Coast chapter, if I can remember all the acronyms. So we're part of that organization. We have specifically, we send out and target large landscapes that use over certain amounts of water. So we target those, we call them high users group We specifically reach out to them via phone or email. We also reach out to contractors when people are irrigating during the winter time. You wouldn't believe the number of people and large landscapes that leave their irrigation system on even when it's raining. So those people we reach out to specifically, we look at their water usage and determine if they're irrigating during the winter, and we actually contact those people as well to get a relationship going and require that they turn off the irrigation system in the winter. At this point, since our lawn removal rebate program launched, I think that was in 2007, if I'm remembering that correctly. Don't quote me on that year, but since our lawn removal program has launched, we've removed over 3.5 million square feet of grass in the city of Santa Rosa, and much of that has come through large commercial entities removing grass. So we certainly have established relationships with a lot of landscape contractors. If there's someone here that has, is interested in lawn removal or interested in irrigation audit, we'd be happy to come out and chat with you all.
There was a question, I'm not sure I quite understood it, but apparently the sub HOA here involved had engaged in your program and they, quote, had maxed out. Is that a phrase that makes sense to you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can they reapply?
The short answer right now is no. Basically, that means that they've met their limit on the number of square feet that they can remove, and therefore a rebate is maxed out for that meter. We're looking at reopening the rebate program for people who have spent their irrigation or their rebate amount allotment, but we haven't done that yet. So they could certainly reach out and we could let them know sort of how that's progressing and whether we could reopen that rebate amount for them in the future.
Okay.
George,
yeah.
Can I go back to the previous question? I just wanted to mention that the Sonoma Marin Saving Water Partnership has what's called the Qualified Water Efficient Landscaper Program, QUEL, and that's on the Water Saving Partnership website. And through that program for the past, I want to say 10 years, Claire was one of the people who helped launch that program when she was with Sonoma Water. We've trained and educated hundreds of landscapers in sustainable and water efficient landscaping practices. And this program has received many awards and recognition from the EPA's WaterSense program. So I know it's a program that we're very proud of and has made a big difference in the better use of water.
Claire, if I'm looking at an HOA that has a substantial amount of green lawn, okay, what are you going to tell them with regard to, in general, what are you going to tell them with regard to maintaining lawns?
To maintaining their lawn, not to remove it, because that would be my first recommendation.
Okay.
If people are very, lawn devout and they feel that they cannot remove it, a couple of recommendations. One is a simple one: just mow your lawn longer. Don't cut it down to 2 inches, go up to 3 or even 4 inches. That really helps shade the ground underneath. It reduces evaporation. The other piece I would say is step on it. If your lawn springs back, you don't need to irrigate it right away. That's a simple check to confirm that it's well irrigated or not. And then third, if you want to invest, is to put in new sprinklers. We have sprinklers now that are called multi-stream rotating nozzles. As opposed to sprinklers that just pop up and sort of spray out, these pop up and then they kind of have like fingers, like jets of water that kind of stream over a lawn like that. And they're excellent sprinklers because they put out really large drops of water. They're less likely to be blown away in the wind, less likely to suffer from evaporation. So they actually fall to the area where you want them to, which is the lawn. But I guess my first recommendation would be remove the lawn. Unless you're using it, unless you're playing on it every day, unless your dogs are so happy and rolling around on a small patch, you can really get rid of most of it. This is California. We live in an arid climate. We don't have the water to waste. I suggest putting in some beautiful low water use plants, attracting bees and butterflies, birds to your yard, and really enjoying the beautiful low water use plants that we have that are native to California.
Okay, so I just got my report from you as to how much water I'm using. Okay,
Okay.
how do I interpret that in terms of what's a good number and, you know, what would be a personal target, or is that even a meaningful way of phrasing things?
Yeah, that's funny. We've been having an internal conversation about this, and there's a lot of opinions about this. I would say that for indoor water usage, a target of about 40 to 60 gallons per person per day is reasonable and doable. People can get down even lower. You can get down to 25 to 35. After 25 gallons, that's just not good for health and safety. But I would say an average, pretty good water saver is between about 40 to 60 gallons per person. And that's just for indoor water use. Outdoor water use is incredibly varied. You know, it depends on what kind of irrigation system you have, if you're in full sun or full shade, how big your lot is. So I really can't predict how much water you should be using outdoors. We could certainly come to your house and look at your individual property and give you an assessment of, you know, this should be more efficient, or you can change your irrigation timer and you can save this amount of water. So we can provide sort of an individualized recommendation, but I can't give just a general, this is how much, you know, a landscape could use in Santa Rosa, because it's way too varied.
Okay. Are you planning, or do you offer rebates for low flow toilets?
We had a toilet rebate program for about 15 years. And towards the end of the program, the reason why we canceled is because we didn't have any participation. People just have already replaced their toilets. We've gone through so many toilet replacements in Santa Rosa that we just didn't have any more stock to replace. Of course, there are still large toilets in our service area. Of course, there are still, you know, high flow toilets. But we don't provide a replacement rebate anymore because we just don't have the volume needed to make that a viable program and spend the administrative burden of getting those rebates processed.
Okay, we're approaching the end of the session. Is there a last question that's going to show up on the chat for me to pass on? Okay, well, this is the question that Paul's been held over for. Paul, should we be worried about our lawn being converted or dried or whatever as being less fire resistant?
So, I mean, we saw green lush lawns burn during the Tubbs fire. So under the right conditions, anything's unfortunately going to burn. I mean, succulent gardens were burning during the Tubbs fire. So again, I mean, whether you have a green lush lawn or if you decide to kind of let your lawn go, we would ask that even if it is still being under irrigated, that you keep it cut low into the ground, so that if it does burn, the flame spread or ember cast off of it is minimized. And again, it just goes back to, most importantly, not just the defensible space in the home hardening, but people take this opportunity maybe to also work on some landscaping efforts in that 0 to 5 feet. So there's maybe how you may right now have plants that are around that first 0 to 5 feet, that now would be a good time to remove them and go with that hardscape or different type of material around the first 5 feet. It helps save water and also helps protect your home. The one other thing I just want to quickly mention, and I don't have a perfect answer for it, we get a lot of questions pretty regularly about irrigation being turned on in advance of wildfires. I will tell you, I watched a number of properties and homes in the city that did that, and their yard still burned, and they ended up with thousands and thousands and thousands of gallons of water freely flowing on their properties, especially while they're evacuated. I have one case of a city resident near Los Alamos Road where I think they lost upwards of 15,000 gallons of water that just freely flowed. So again, I don't have a perfect answer, but it is something to be aware of. And there may be some cases where it is more appropriate to, if even with the measures reduced, that it shut off in advance of a fire.
Yeah, two last questions. One was, I just heard Paul saying, cut the grass short, and I just heard Claire saying, let the grass grow long. Can we
We're gonna
combine
have
those?
to, Paul and I are gonna have to arm wrestle over who's right.
So, when I say short, let me stick to short meaning 4 inches, because technically, homes that primarily include a majority of Oakmont, not all of it, but homes are required to comply with the weed abatement ordinance during fire season. So Claire is correct during the off season and in other parts of the city. And I apologize for any confusion, but yes, what could have once been a lush lawn has now turned to more weeds. And the weeds, when free growing, especially if when the wildland urban interface or any vacant lot is required to comply with the weed abatement ordinance, which would require it to be reduced down to at least 4 inches in height.
I'm just going to read this question. How do you have gray water reuse actually installed?
Well, I'm not an installer, but the general understanding is you take your the actual pipe that comes out of the washing machine and would normally go into your sewer system, which is like, the pipe in the side of your house, and you would reroute that through PVC to your outdoor landscaped area and into like a mulch basin. So it's like a hole filled with mulch so that the water can slowly infiltrate.
Okay.
It's actually not that complicated or expensive. It's a fairly easy.
I think for most
plumbing
people
change.
here, what we've got is we have an existing irrigation system.
It does not filter into the irrigation system. It's a completely separate line of pipe.
Okay, and once again, what does it water?
It can water whatever you want it to outside. It can't spray, so that's the only requirement from the state of California water code. The gray water has to soak in, so it can be in a drip system. It can water trees. It can water whatever you want it to. It just can't spray out as in a sprinkler system like
Okay.
a lawn.
We'll leave that as something to be learned. Okay. Well, I cannot thank the three of you enough for having gotten us started here. It's unfortunate that we have to be here, but we probably ought to be more efficient anyway. Any final comments from any of the three of you?
Just thanks for letting us be here. It's really nice to hear people that are passionate and glad to save water and thinking about water conservation. So thank you all. And George, I've got 2 questions that I wrote down that I wasn't able to answer, and so I'll email you those, and please feel free to follow up with me if you've got additional questions after that.
We will do that. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Meeting's over.
Thank you all.